Hello and welcome everybody. This is Social Enterprise Mark and this is our second coffee morning that we're having online. So hopefully we might be able to do the next one a little bit more in person. But I am Sally Ryan. I'm the Business Development Manager at Social Enterprise Mark and I'm joined by some colleagues today. And this session is all about social impact. So it's mostly related to how we look at social impact as we go through the accreditation process that we run at Social Enterprise Mark. And we'll be explaining a little bit more about that as well. I'd like to introduce, first of all, Sophie, who's my colleague. She's in my top left of the screen. So hello, Sophie. Sophie, would you like to introduce yourself and just your role within Social Enterprise Mark?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for joining us, everyone. It's great to see so many of you here. My name's Sophie Short. Some of you, I recognise you. Some of you are newer faces, so welcome. I'm responsible for marketing and communications at Social Enterprise Mark CIC.
Thanks, Sophie. And we're also very fortunate to be joined by Gareth, who is on our assessment team. So a really important person that maybe a few people would like to ask a question to later when we do a Q&A. So Gareth, hello to you. And how are you today?
Thanks, Sally. Yeah, hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I've got a cup of tea here. It's not a tea morning rather than a coffee morning. Yeah, great to be here. I'm Gareth Hart, so I'm sort of acting at the moment as a freelance assessor for the Social Enterprise Mark, looking at the renewals and some of the assessments. I also sit with Nikki as well on the certification panel. So we are kind of part of the organisation, sort of looking at the social impact statements that you might be making when you apply for the mark and when you renew the mark. But you know, happy to answer questions and talk more about what we do and how we assess it. So.
Thank you. Thanks, Gareth. So it's great to have Gareth here with us. I'd also like to introduce our two speakers. They're joining us for a sort of facilitated conversation to kind of kickstart the session today. So I'd like to introduce Anna Smith, who's project coordinator at Forward Carers, aren't you, Anna?
Yeah, that's right. Morning, everyone. Gareth, I've gone the coffee route this morning and my post has just arrived, so that's good. So there shouldn't be any disruptions from my end. It's very noisy when that happens. So yeah, great to be here. Do you want me to introduce Forward Carers or save that for a little bit later?
No, I think introduce Forward Carers just for a moment. That'd be really helpful to everybody as we get settled in. Thank you.
Okay, certainly. Well, I'm obviously a bit biased, but I think we're a fantastic organisation and we support unpaid carers, and I've popped a little bit of information in the chat. So unpaid carers may or may not be a term you're familiar with. It's someone that supports a family member or a friend who relies on them, possibly because of health, age, frailty, disability. And carers do an amazing job and they also need some support in their role, and we deliver services directly. We also work in partnership with other not-for-profits to deliver services across Birmingham and the West Midlands, and we facilitate and empower other organisations to improve their carer support as well.
Oh, thank you very much. And I guess also it's been a really, and all businesses have been disrupted by the last 18 months, but certainly that mental health and all of the wellbeing services and you know, carers, a lot of hidden carers, aren't there, who actually probably have found the last 18 months particularly tough.
It's been an incredibly tough time, and I'm very much sort of looking outwards at the difficulties for carers themselves. You know, carers are traditionally more isolated than other members of the community and can have more sort of physical and mental health challenges as well. There's some fantastic elements of being a carer, and people are very proud, rightly, of their caring role. But that isolation was obviously exacerbated over this time, at the same time that lots of support and services for the people that they care for were removed. So it's been a really difficult time, and we across our partnerships have pivoted, yeah, that word, and we've been able to adapt and deliver and continue delivering across 100% of our partners have continued to deliver support for carers, and that's been essential.
Fantastic, thank you. And I know there's some other health and wellbeing and mental health enterprises represented today. I can see Nathan nodding over there. So I'm sure that there is some really good connections to be made, and also maybe some Q&A sort of exchanges going on later as well. So thank you so much for joining us. And then Gary. So Gary, you are the enterprise manager over at the Growth Company, and you're very newly accredited with us.
Yes, yeah, very new to the process. We achieved the accreditation last month, which was absolutely fantastic, really, after a quite rigorous assessment process. The Growth Company is an economic development agency that's been established since 1989. We offer several different sort of services, different legal entities under one sort of parent umbrella, working, against a range of different sort of sectors, supporting people to get back employment. We have an apprenticeship learning division within the Growth Company. We also deal with business finance, business support, export and importing overseas. We do some charity work. Yes, quite a broad spectrum, really, predominantly, again, across Greater Manchester, but also working in Yorkshire as well, and just trying to increase our national footprint, if you like, to cover the UK. With the sole purpose of making an economic difference in the Northwest, across Greater Manchester and broader UK going forward.
I think it's a really interesting mix, and one of the things that we were really keen to have Gary with us today is because they're sort of a group of about 10, 11 smaller social enterprises. So as part of the accreditation process and this conversation around social impact, Gary's got a really good grasp of actually how smaller organisations can look at social impact, and particularly evidencing as part of our accreditation process. So I think one of the things that came out of our last coffee morning, where people were interested, and this is where we've responded to that interest, to say, the social impact questions, that might be a bit scary for us. We're not quite sure what social impact we have. How do we evidence it? How do we collect that, etc.? And that's why we've actually put this session together. And we wanted to kind of have a good spread, not only across the sectors in terms of delivery of goods and services for social enterprises that have come into accreditation, how they use that accreditation, how they evidence their social impact, but also that sort of range of the business journey from quite small, maybe other startups, through to more established and long-standing sustainable social enterprises. So one of the things, so there's a bit of audience participation, so that was your 2-second warning. So it'd be really good, just have literally a hands up. I know you're introducing yourselves in the chat, which is fantastic, but it'd be great to have a quick hands up. Who that is present is sort of a 0 to 2 year social enterprise business? So we have a few there, which is fantastic. So Nathan, really good to talk to you. And we've got a couple of others there as well. And who, so hands down for that one. Next one, we've got 3 of these. So second one, who's in the sort of 2 to 5 years? So becoming sustainable, maybe beginning to expand their workforce, maybe beginning to really get to grips with that reinvestment of profit that makes us sort of good social enterprises. Who's, hands up, who's in that the 2 to 5 year age bracket? We don't have many popping their hands up there. Anybody else that is then sort of 5 years plus? Lovely. So we've got Beth, Gareth in your own social enterprise, and a couple of others. So that gives us a really nice kind of feel for the mix that we have in the room. So thank you for that. So we're going to kind of move to the facilitated bit of the conversation. So really bringing Gary and Anna in. But I wonder if, Sophie, you could sort of start this part of facilitated conversation and just talk a little bit about how Social Enterprise Mark has gone about establishing the sort of the social impact information, the social impact statements from our side of the fence, if you like.
Yeah, sure. I won't go into too much detail. What I'll do is I'll post a link to a bit more information on our website about how we assess social impact. But just to give a brief overview, for our Social Enterprise Mark and Gold Mark accreditations, we ask for evidence of social impact. That's on application originally, and then every 3 years at what we call a full review, although we do encourage all our mark holders to submit new evidence annually. It's just not a mandatory requirement. So what we provide is a set of questions that have been designed to help social enterprises think about the social impact they're creating and to enable them to articulate it clearly and succinctly. It is possible for people to submit social impact reports if they already have those and produce those, so they can submit that as evidence rather than answering the questions. But I know a lot of people find the social impact questions very helpful in guiding them through the process, especially if it's something they haven't done before. And all of the social impact evidence that we collect, that is all displayed on listings in our online directory. So we try and be very transparent with what it is we're assessing, and then obviously it hopefully helps in terms of promoting the social enterprises and the impact they're creating.
Lovely, thank you. And we do kind of refer back to sustainable development goals as well, don't we? We sort of within the sort of criteria or the subcategories of social impact. So I think that helps organisations kind of frame and think and frame about what they're doing. But I guess both sort of Gary and Anna in turn, had you collected sort of social impact information? Had you reported on it sort of prior to going through your own accreditations?
Yes, I'll start if that's okay with Anna. Yeah, we had previously. We'd predominantly reported that up to board directors because obviously that's in line with our whole purpose, really, you know, to create jobs and efficiencies and improve lives. That's our mission statement, really. Some of it is also contractual requirements as well. We work with a lot of sort of government type contracts, and there are requirements in there to obviously report on social impact. But it's something that we've sort of invested in internally as well, particularly over the last 2 or 3 years. We've just appointed a social value lead within the business. It's one of my colleagues, Matthew Richardson. He took up that post, I think, in March this year. So although we have done it sort of, you know, over a period of time, we're now looking to really measure it and look how we can improve and, you know, look at what gaps we can plug. We seem to be there's a lot more focus, I think, on that now, you know, measuring our social impact and you know, determine how effective that is. So we have done it previously. We'd reported that up to the board. So obviously, when I received the questions from Social Enterprise Mark, one of the good things for me personally was that it wasn't sort of reinventing the wheel. I don't think it wasn't asking us, should I say, to do things that we weren't already doing, but it did provide a very good framework, I think, to actually, you know, sit down and map out how we measure our social impact, how we determine, you know, what's working well and what we need to improve on, if you like.
Did it sort of trigger any, actually, we're asking this question and it's catalysed some thinking about, well, we do create some social impact in an area that perhaps previously you hadn't been fully aware of or had maybe not sort of looked at the level of priority. And obviously you've got sort of, you know, new social enterprises that are just starting to understand and measure sort of impact within the growth company.
Yeah, obviously we're quite purely by design, really. We're quite complex. We've got several legal entities operating under one parent umbrella, and that can differ from, you know, quite large organisations, 200, 250 people, to very small organisations, you know, which are their own legal entities of no more than 10 staff, 8 staff in one particular business. I think there's another one that's got about 15 staff. So it was looking at, you know, what sort of impacts they were making individually. One of the good things as well, I thought, was the environmental element to it, and the environmental impact. You know, that got us thinking again, particularly in line with, you know, the agenda on climate change. I thought there were some really good questions that made us take a step back and, you know, determine how effective we measure, you know, environmental impact as well from the social impact perspective. So well, that was really good. You know, it got us thinking about how we best do that, and you know, how we can sort of validate it, if you like.
Yeah. And just to bring Anna in with the same sort of question, really, because you've been accredited with us for 4 years plus now.
Right.
So obviously there's something that kind of works for yourselves as forward carers, but you know, you've gone through quite a journey from very small sort of lower numbers of staff when you first came into accreditation, and obviously where Gary was just saying there, that the environmental questions were kind of quite provocative and thought-provoking for them at the Growth Company. You're obviously a lot more focused around the social side of things, and that's changed, I guess, through sort of the period of 4 years you've been with us.
Yeah, it's definitely changed over those 4 years, and I sort of think of our journey with the social enterprise mark as being sort of the starting point of our journey of beginning to articulate publicly our social impact and getting much better at doing that. So like Gary, we have contracts with statutory agencies, so we have reporting requirements. So we were established at reporting back against, you know, preset measures set by our funders. But that's obviously a very internal mechanism, and we were looking to get better at articulating that externally, and being really proud actually, and singing our own praises and saying, look, you know, you don't just have to trust us when we say we're doing something good. You know, here's the evidence. We're an accredited organisation, and actually, you know, when I think back to that, the first accreditation back in 2017, it was sort of a professional journey we were going on as forward carers, and a personal journey for me of, you know, coming across some of these terms for the first time, you know, social impact, social value, you know, and it's something that I feel really glad that we came across at that time, because we all know now that those words are very much we've got a lot of cachet, and rightly so nowadays, and that's what, you know, funders, you know, public bodies, statutory, the public generally are looking to know, you know, what difference are you making, and how can you prove that? So I think that when we first applied back in 2017, it was a really interesting process, and it did require us to think long and hard about how and where we can gather that evidence from, and how good we were at actually articulating that and sharing that publicly. I have to say, when we went through our sort of 3-year renewal this year, it was actually a real joy, because it just felt really easy compared to the first time when everything was a bit newer. That said, we got a lot of help from yourselves and the organisation, so anything we didn't know, you know, I always felt really comfortable asking and getting feedback. But certainly this time round, you know, I was able to draw on, you know, everything that we use sort of day to day in our social media to talk to the public and to talk to carers about what we do and how we do it well. And then we also have gone through a process of applying for awards to recognise our work, and to draw on all of those elements. And actually, yeah, everything dovetailed really nicely. The questions that are being asked as part of our application are very similar to the questions we're asking ourselves, are similar to the questions that we're being asked when we're applying for awards. So it's sort of all come together really nicely.
So how did it feel in terms of actually gathering that evidence? You know, because obviously it's not just yourself, Anna, and yourself, Gary. It's, you have to kind of engage your staff teams, don't you? And you know, whether you're the chief exec and it's a kind of a top-down directive, or whether it's actually taking staff with you through that journey of understanding all the good things that your own businesses do deliver. How was that? Was it difficult? Was it easy? Was it quite complicated? Did you find that you actually had information within the business already, or did you sort of have to start with a little bit of a blank sheet of paper?
So for us, so as I said, back in 2017, when we were first looking at this, it was a smaller organisation. I think there were about sort of 4 full-time members of staff at the time, 4 or 5. We've now grown to 12 over that time. There's real buy-in from the team. Everybody understands why it's important to be able to measure and evidence what we're doing well and the difference it's making. So that's really useful. It's really helpful. And I think
helps you be an employer of choice almost.
Yeah, very much so, because people feel proud of what we're doing, and when by measuring that, and as I sort of keep using the word being able to articulate that, it helps us feel good about what we're doing and know that we're making a real and a positive difference. There's no point, yes, we can say we do this, that and the other, but if that's not actually making life better for the people that we serve and work for, unpaid carers, then there's not much value to it. So we do have, amongst, even when we were in the smaller team, somebody in a data analyst role, and that was again around our reporting requirements for our funders. So lots of the information we were being asked for did exist. We had to perhaps think about how we could gather that information and make sure, I guess this was part of the process, make sure that you're asking yourselves the right questions throughout the year. So it comes to whether it's the year end or a license renewal, a funding application or an awards application, you have to be collecting the data in order to be able to report on it. So that thought process is a really important part of it as well.
Thank you. And Gary, because obviously within your business, you've got quite good infrastructure system. So did you find, sort of what data do you actually collect? How do you sort of go about that in terms of a sort of a systems and reporting? How does it help you make informed business decisions as well? You mentioned that you're sort of using some of that for contracts and the like.
Yeah, that's sort of our bread and butter, really. It forms the basis of what we do every day. Looking to improve the lives of our customers. We're a not-for-profit organisation. Any profits are sort of reinvested back into the business. We're not commercial focused, although we have been looking to perhaps increase our commercial activity. Predominantly, our main drivers, trying to get people back into work. Last year, for example, we got just over 17,000 people, unemployed people, we helped to find work. We helped over 8,000 people to obtain new skills and qualifications as part of our education and skills division. We helped perhaps just over 11,000 new businesses to start trade as part of our business finance and business support elements. 11,000 new jobs were created as a result of that. And we were looking at sort of, in terms of an environmental perspective, we sort of saved 2 million tons of carbon last year. That's something we've got really hot on recently, is measuring our carbon footprint. This came from the top, really. It was our chief executive who wanted to explore. I think he recognised that we do a lot of good work, internally, and we report our social impact internally and, to our stakeholders. But it was quite sort of vague and ambiguous, I think, the definition of being a social enterprise. He wanted some validation, to say we've been through a process where someone has sort of, verified that we are indeed a social enterprise. It helps, strengthens that sort of message, I think. And we had a look out in the market, about what accreditations were out there. And the first one we were sort of drawn to immediately was the Social Enterprise Mark. We looked at another one, which was more of a membership type scheme.
Okay.
But, you paid a fee and you became a member.
Yeah.
We wanted something a bit more than that. We wanted an actual assessment. We wanted someone to come in really as sort of like a critical friend and tell us what we were doing well, tell us where we needed to improve, and ultimately, validate what we were doing, really, to help us define that ourselves, to actually, strengthen and reinforce that message that we are indeed, a social enterprise. That's one of our, key drivers in everything we do, being creating a positive impact. So our chief executive was the one who sort of, pushed that out there. I did some research, and so immediately that was very good, because the senior management team were sort of plugged into this. It wasn't sort of someone, from middle management trying to push it. Very much focused from a senior point of view. So that helped definitely, in terms of the application process. I predominantly work with our chief financial officer, who's the second most senior person in the business. He focused on all the financial aspects, because there are questions on financially, how do you
reinvestment of profit and
Absolutely.
Making sure that is evidenced and links back into your stated social and environmental purposes.
Yes, yeah. So he sort of took the lead on that, and I looked at sort of everything else, really, and engaged colleagues across the business. One of the things I liked when there was a question about, how can you evidence? Have you got any end user experience? That can sort of, as evidence, if you like. And what we've done over the past sort of 3 or 4 years, probably like a lot of organisations, we've tried to adopt a more sort of digital approach. So we've gone to a lot of online videos on our YouTube channel, where we're engaging with our customers and users to get their feedback on how we've helped them and helped to change their lives. And there was already sort of reams and reams of good evidence. So what I did, I dropped the video links into that question.
Perfect.
Actions speak louder than words. Rather than sort of adding a lot of narrative, I purely just hyperlinked all our online content, because I think that that's got everything in there that answered that question. And our assessment manager, Richard, who was a huge help, he was really impressed with that. He said, I think you've done the right thing there, rather than sort of adding lots of narrative, you've just the evidence, that's all we need, really.
I think it adds a richness, doesn't it? And it's about the transformative outcomes rather than a spreadsheet of outputs. It's great that you've got the stats and the figures, but actually it's when you've got somebody into training or employment or volunteering or work experience, whatever it might be, it's that difference, because that real value comes in there, and then that sort of leads us into social mobility and building social capital, which I would imagine your contribution certainly around Manchester, as you've said, as your locality. It's kind of like taking it on, isn't it, into a whole other story about the social capital that you've helped build in the Manchester area. But were there any challenges, either of you, in terms of trying to find evidence and really sort of getting to grips with understanding what it was that you needed to capture, or actually challenges around how you were capturing something and sort of the process has helped you improve or change that?
If I just answer briefly, I think our challenge was actually more the storing of that information, so that we were capturing most things that we were being asked about. And Gareth just put something really, really nice in the chat. I think it was no stats without stories, no stories without stats. I really love that you have like the quantitative and the qualitative, and together they tell a story. And so we were capturing things, but they weren't always that easy to find just within our sort of online filing system, or I'm sure I saw something great on Facebook that's whether it's a video or that we'd shared, or I know someone's captured this. So the exercise was to dig through all of the stuff that we did have, and we were storing on our systems, and draw it together. So one of the things that we've obviously got better at doing, and that's speeded up the process, is just creating a system where we save everything centrally in some shared spaces, so that anyone can access them, and we don't have to sort of think about who might have that and where might it be stored.
And now you can build on that and start doing the sort of trend analysis, if you like, sort of
Absolutely,
looking at
yeah.
that, the growth and the scaling up of the impact that you're creating, I guess.
Very much so, and we are in the process of doing some month-on-month trend analysis of feedback from carers actually about one of our major services, and that's proving really helpful and really valuable. Yeah.
So I guess sort of from what I hear from what you're saying, Anna, is actually even if you start small, and it could be just a solo social entrepreneur, is start looking at what you believe your social value and your social impact is, and start measuring something. Yeah. Even if you then adapt and change it later on. But if you don't start measuring something, it's really difficult to tell your story.
Absolutely that, and yet start measuring, and that change and adaptation I think is part of that measurement. You know, what you learn will shape therefore what you realize you need to be recording, or you know, as your growth in size or services, you know, those questions might change, but start measuring them, and start saving that information somewhere centrally. But yeah, it's really important. If you're not getting that data back, if you're not asking questions and measuring it, you've got nothing to draw on. So even if the questions aren't perfect, it's a starting point that you can then build upon.
Lovely. But and Gary, any reflections from you on the same sort of aspect, challenges or kind of changes, I guess, sort of in going through the process of collecting your social impact information and evidence?
Yeah, we sort of, you know, tagged some of the advice we were given, which was good, was when going through the questions, you know, rather than just sort of blindly attaching evidence, you know, you can attach evidence, which is fantastic. Try and give some context behind it. A lot of the stuff we were doing already, really, you know, it wasn't really new to us. You know, we were aware how we were measuring our social impact. So it was a mixture of tagging the relevant evidence of board reports, stats, KPIs, but also giving it more context as well. And I think by giving it that more context, it helped to sort of reflect on it as well. What is the current approach effective? It sort of enabled us to step back, and you know, that's one of the things I liked, rather than sort of Richard saying, yeah, you can just send us all the evidence and, you know, you briefly answer the questions. Richard was sort of cruel to be kind, really. He said, you can attach evidence, that's absolutely fine, but, you know, please also answer the questions as well. Which initially you're thinking, oh, well, you know, we've got the evidence there, you know, but is this really necessary? But my opinion changed on that completely, because I thought that was really helpful, because it enabled us to sort of attach evidence, but also, you know, give it some context. And whilst we were giving that context, it enabled us to reflect on the way we're doing it already. You know, can we do it better? Can we streamline things? Can we tease out more sort of the impact we're having on our end users and on our customers, really? So I thought that was a great way of doing it. And when we submitted our application, you know, there was answers, there was queries, there was questions coming back, which I quite enjoyed, really, sort of providing that additional information, because that, you know, demonstrated that it was a thorough process.
Yeah. So it sort of really challenged the things that you didn't know.
Yeah, particularly some of the financials as well. You know, there was quite a few queries about, you know, set of accounts and from the financial elements and aspects, which sort of chief financial officer, you know, addressed. But you could tell that Richard was really, you know, he'd really reviewed the evidence that we'd submitted. So, you know, some of his emails were very extensive and detailed. So again, that just encouraged us even more to, you know, to sort of provide everything that we needed. So I thought that worked well.
Brilliant. So I guess sort of just wrap up this part of the session today. It would just be really useful, perhaps for people as they're preparing their questions, popping them in the chat or get ready to pop a hand up. Just to sort of really capture sort of like having gone through the accreditation process, and you're now both social enterprise mark holders, so we're obviously, you know, delighted with that. But how do you now use the accreditation that you have? I mean, obviously, Gary, that's a how do you intend to use. Anna, maybe how have you used the accreditation? How have you levered that across your business?
Yeah, you'll see if you were to go on our website or any of our sort of funding applications or our email sign-offs, we place the logo everywhere because we're really proud of it and because it stands for something. It tells people that we are an organisation with a social purpose and that we reinvest out, we prioritise people over profits. For us personally, we reinvest 100% of any profits back into the business, and we want that to be really clear and really obvious to people. So it's very much an external validation. So whether it's the certificate up on the wall, or it's actually on the side in the office in a frame, or the logo everywhere, we use it publicly, and we always reference it if we are talking to anybody externally and we want to kind of build our credibility.
Fantastic. Gary, how about you? What are your intentions in terms of, I know you've been super supportive and enthusiastic, as soon as you had your accreditation, it's like, right, we want to tell everybody. How's that looking sort of a month or two on, and what are the plans, I guess, for the year ahead?
Again, well, one of the things, again, I was really impressed with when we got through the accreditation, we obviously knew it was, quite prestigious, but we've probably underestimated it slightly. I think when we achieved it, there was a real sense of achievement, I think, from Social Enterprise Mark. So again, that was fantastic. And I deal with sort of quality. I'm more process, procedures, quality. I don't deal with marketing. So one of the things I did immediately was trying to, plug into our marketing team and say, we need to start shouting about this because it's a really good thing to have. We've put a lot of work into it. One of the things I was impressed with, Sophie, who's the marketing manager, she came to one of our marketing meetings because I thought that would be really useful. Rather than us meeting, myself meeting with the marketing team, I thought if Sophie comes along, she can give it a bit more context and she can maybe, outline how sort of other businesses are doing it, other mark holders are doing it. So a meeting 2 or 3 weeks ago, which Sophie came along to, and I think Sophie just being there made it a much more productive meeting, really, which was very helpful. And we had a marketing and comms director on there, and she's put a bit of a mini project plan together to get it on the website, to get it on social media, get the certificates in all our offices, and to do a press release as well long term, because we're looking at the gold mark. We don't want to stop at the standard mark. Our chief executive wants to go the whole hog, if you like. So we're looking at the gold mark. Hopefully by the end of March next year, we want to ideally achieve that. So we're going to do, fingers crossed, if that is achievable, we're going to do a press release formally to get that out. But at the moment, it's just sort of, plugging into our marketing team to make sure that as many people know about this as possible.
Fantastic. And I think that's really interesting that the assessment from going through the accreditation, which obviously, shows all of that, as you've both said, independent and robust sort of methodology about what is your social impact. Is it what you say, in terms of your articles of association? Do we see that in terms of that reinvestment piece through breakdown of finance and accounts? Do we see that through the sort of contextual evidencing? But I think that report, that's kind of quite helpful, useful in terms of, this is what you're doing really, really well and evidencing really well, but actually these are maybe some areas with some hints and guidance as to how improvements could be made as you move forward as a social enterprise mark holder.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, so I guess really interesting, fascinating. I'm sure we could probably carry on talking amongst us, but it would be really lovely to bring others in the virtual room into the conversation. I just wonder, I know Sophie, you've been very kindly monitoring the chat, and there may be a few questions if we've got somebody that wants to pop a hand up or you know, sort of just open dialogue now. You've got Gareth on the assessment team, available to answer questions, Sophie on the marketing and amplifying that message, and really sort of levering your accreditation status. You've obviously got sort of mark holders here. And I know we've got Nathan, who's just actually in that process of going through assessment. So Nathan, all of your stuff is with Gareth at the moment, you know, so we'll be in touch very, very soon. But yes, any questions? I can see Nikki's got a hand up on my screen. Perhaps while Sophie, you could pull some questions out the chat for me in a moment. So Nikki, over to you. What would you like to ask, and how can we kind of direct you, signpost you, or connect you?
Well, I'm also on the accreditation panel and an assessor, so I'm sort of coming really from that point of view, having looked at how people have answered the impact questions in the assessment process, which, if I'm honest, is often not as good as it could be, because you go through the form and you see all these fantastic things that people are doing, and then you get to the impact question at the end, and sometimes people aren't very good at telling their story, which I think is why we're here today. But the question I had, and it was sort of struck by what Anna and Gary were saying, is about whether when you get your stories about your impact and you've gathered your information and you've got your evidence, do you close the loop and feed that information back to your staff? Because I think Anna mentioned how important it is that everybody is engaged and invested in the process. And sometimes people don't seem to do that and then wonder why people aren't invested. And it's because they never hear the end of the story. So I just wanted to hear about whether people think that's an important part of the circularity of the process. It's to help people improve, but also to feel that pride in their organisation.
So it's that sort of internal communications piece alongside the external comms.
Yes, and I think people sometimes so keen to tell their story to the outside world, they forget about sort of making sure everybody inside knows the story as well.
Okay. Anna or Gary, who would like to go first or on that one?
I'm happy to, if that's okay, Gary. Keep it short. Nikki, that's a brilliant point. I completely agree. I think that's really important. A lot of people, myself included, aren't involved in direct service delivery, so we don't get that day-to-day positive feedback, that good feeling of knowing I've directly contributed to something positive in someone else's day. So it's so important to share that. I would say that's a journey that we're on, that we're doing okay, and I think we can do better. So I'm really glad that you've brought that up. We do share those positive stories internally, but there isn't sort of a structure or a process for doing those. Hey guys, look at this fantastic feedback. Isn't that wonderful? I feel great on receiving it. But there isn't anything formalized, and I'd like to. We do work with lots of partners. We have always at least 15 delivery partners, and we have quarterly meetings with partners, and we do share there. But there's our internal core team, and we don't necessarily have a direct process. So that's something I'll take away from here to try to formalise that and make that happen.
And I guess when we use that really well and completely close that loop, then we're actually using that social impact evidence and the accreditation to tell that story fully, even going all the way around to recruitment and actually informing recruitment and going back to that being that employer of choice, because actually you can work here and have a job title and a remuneration package, etc., or you can have the same here, but actually this is all the good stuff that we do and that we can demonstrate. So using it fully as part of your whole business cycle from recruitment all the way through. Gary, any sort of thoughts, feedback to help everybody with your side of that question?
Yeah, what we've done, we've created some sort of strategic objectives and some sort of KPIs really on how we've got one, we've defined one that is actually sort of how we identify gaps where social value is being delivered but not captured. That's an actual objective we set ourselves internally. So, that's not being driven by a contractor. That's something that we've committed to internally. And, in terms of progress, we've already started to look, with our social value lead and our equality, diversity and inclusion lead. We're looking to identify those gaps, and we've created a KPI dashboard. We're monitoring progress against that, where developments, need to be made. We're also reviewing, how our social value commitments are made and signed off internally. How we capture, how we engage with as many staff as possible to do that. So we're raising that staff awareness. Everybody's contributing to the process. We're looking at sort of implementing new social value KPI collection, hopefully for 22-23 rollout next year, which is on track. We're trying to identify and agree other mechanisms, of how we can raise awareness. Really, we've created a social value steering group as well, which our first meeting is next month in October. So again, we've sort of drawn people across different areas of the business. So there's a good mix of staff, from a broad spectrum of the business. And, we're doing stuff around communication, how we communicate our social value, our social impact, what our commitments are. So it's all about, raising awareness, really, with not doing it in isolation and not doing it in silo, if you like.
So it's really part of the infrastructure of the whole organisation, and actually what I can hear from that is that regardless of the size of any social enterprise, going right down to micro, you can still take those best practice good principles of how you do and what you do, and take people along on the journey, whether you're a social enterprise going from an entrepreneur to perhaps employing your first couple of people. You can still draw that down to the scale of your own organisation and use that.
Absolutely.
It's about creating culture, isn't it, within the organisation through your social impact as well.
Definitely. And, we find that some of our smaller entities, create the biggest social impacts in a way. So regardless of size, the social impacts across the business, whether it's one of our larger entities or one of our smaller entities, we're all creating different and meaningful, social impacts, which is fantastic.
Brilliant, thank you. Do we have any other questions? Anybody else want to pop a hand up? Or Sophie, have you spotted a burning question that you think would be a really good discussion?
There was no more direct questions. What we did have a question from Kay, who has recently joined Mastercall, which is another of our existing mark holders. Okay. And I think this is more a question for sort of the group as a whole. I don't know whether you want to come on, Kay. And
hi, so I've as I've just said, I've recently started at Mastercall as a marketing and brand manager. So I'm very new. I've been at Mastercall for 2 weeks. So part of my remit will be to have a look at the social values that we currently have, are promoting, and build upon those. So for myself, I'm particularly interested on any initiatives that anyone's doing internally, how they're being promoted, both internally, externally, what sort of channels, whether it be social. I think Gary mentioned about like website, where those are being distributed, press releases, etc. But it's more the sort of the social values as a whole, and how I can identify any gaps and what we need to do to improve on that. So it's more the specifics that I'm looking at, really. So I'd just be interested in any particular initiatives that people are running, and see if we can pick up any pointers, really, to help.
Anybody in the room at all like to contribute to that one? Sophie, could you maybe sort of give us a run through from a marketing perspective about perhaps responding to some of Kay's questions there?
Yeah, in terms of I think I mentioned earlier that the social impact evidence we collect, it's not just as part of the assessment, although it's a big part of that. we feel it's important to be transparent about what we're doing and sort of the evidence we've seen. So we add the full social impact responses that come to us into every listing in the directory. So every mark holder we have, as and when they update new social impact evidence, that then goes onto our directory. So that's one way that we're sort of hoping to help share that evidence. I know a lot of other mark holders perhaps use the evidence to get started on creating their own impact report. That's actually something we're looking into doing for ourselves for the first time as well this year. And also, I know a lot of social enterprises have sort of a specific area of their website where they maybe focus on their social impact. So that would be a really good place to be incorporating that sort of evidence and, you know, sort of key facts and statistics. But like Gareth said, it's, you know, you need that good mix of having the data, but also having the stories as well. So I think that's always a key thing, is if you can get stories from beneficiaries. I know yourselves, you work in healthcare, so I'm sure you'd have a wealth of evidence that you could use in that way.
I would always advocate the power of your email signature as well. So actually use it. Obviously, you need the informational aspect of your signature, you know, your mobile numbers and website, etc. But actually, you've got free space there. And if you think of everybody in your organisation and how many emails you might send and how they also get shared onwards, you have free space to kind of maybe monthly just pop in your latest social impact stat. I know, you know, we use the Social Enterprise Mark email signature often in terms of sort of business function. So, you know, we've got an event, here it is on our email signature, and it links directly through to, you know, the booking page, etc. But I think particularly for other social enterprises that are delivering their own goods and services, you know, understand what those key facts are, and why not change that on a monthly basis, put a new stat up there, you know, make it a nice impactful little graphic kind of thing, link it to that web page that Sophie was talking about. You know, if you've got a sort of a simple web page, doesn't have to be complicated, that just tells people about how your community of benefit and actually what you are doing to achieve those social and environmental objects that are part of your governing documents.
I've actually just rebranded our email signature as it happens. So there are various, you know, clusters of information and links out there. And one of the things that that was looking to put in was like links to, you know, pulling things in as and when. So what you've just mentioned, yeah, that ties in with what we're looking to do. So that's really good. So, yeah,
I think the other thing with social media channels as well is that it's easy to kind of do social media posts around the funded program or the, you know, apprenticeship opportunity or whatever, but also intersperse actually some social media posts about who you are as a social enterprise and what your purpose is and who your community benefit are. So kind of go back to the, you know, some organizational posts to be really clear, and, you know, use that social enterprise status, your legal status, and hopefully your accreditation status proudly. I think, you know, as Anna, you said that really, really well, you know, you're superbly proud, and Gary as well, of having not only being a social enterprise as a legal entity, but also of having that accreditation. And I think that passion and pride is what really brings us together as a sector, doesn't it? As the social enterprise sector. Doesn't matter whether we're goods, services, health and well-being, producing, I don't know, pens or placemats or whatever kind of thing. It's that pride and passion which really sort of binds us, and also creates great collaboration. So hopefully within the chat, which we can record and send out as a file, I believe, Sophie, you know, in terms of it having people's connection and links on there.
Yeah. Perfect.
So if you have by any chance missed picking up on that link of somebody that you've seen in the room today that you think, oh, I'd really like to connect with them, we can actually sort of make sure that that is transcript is included in the thank you send that will follow up from this. So I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you so much for joining us this morning. I hope it's been interesting. I hope it's kind of maybe catalysed some thinking for people. And obviously, Sophie, Gareth and myself, we're all here within our emails and within our Social Enterprise Mark, the different roles that we have. You know, get in touch with us if you've got a question, or drop us an email if you want to arrange a sort of like an online meeting to talk a little bit further. I'd really like to thank Anna and Gary. So, yay, fantastic, really interesting session. And also, please do, when we send you out the email follow-up to this, let us know what your interest is, because as I say, this session, we could go into a lot more detail, I think. We'd like to run another session, I think, before Christmas, but it's really about what would be useful for yourselves. We've had a couple of people already contact us and express interest in some of the other Social Enterprise Mark holder levels of accreditation, so things like the gold level. If that's of interest, then we're more than happy to pull a session together on that one. If there are other topics that other people would like to sort of suggest, either let us know right now, pop a hand up and have that part, or as I say, reply by email to us. So I'm going to say thank you very much. Thank you to my colleagues. Thank you to, as I say, both Anna and Gary, and thank you to everybody else. And just have a fabulous day. We've got the last few days of sort of autumn sunshine. So get out there, break from the screen, bit of vitamin D outside, and have a great end to your week. And thank you very much. See you soon.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.